The poem London is written by William Blake, who is considered to be the precursor to the Romantic movement or Romantic literature. During this time, the British Empire was ruled by King George III. It was a time of great political and social unrest. The reason of this unrest were mainly French Revolution, capitalism, scientific advancement, and finally the influence of Thomas Paine, a revolutionary writer. So the first reason of this social and political unrest was the French Revolution. During this time, French Revolution took place, and the King of England did not want any wave of this revolution to come to England, so he tried his best to control his countrymen. Secondly, capitalism spread this time. The capitalists were exploiting the poor working class people. They were growing more rich. On the contrary, the poor or working class people were growing poorer. People used to live in slums. Their financial condition was so bad that they even did not want to have children. Sometimes they sold their children as chimney sweepers. Women got involved in prostitution for their livings. Thirdly, scientific advancement. During this time, scientific advancement took place. People were losing their faith in the traditional doctrines of religion. So the church was in great problems. To sustain their existence, the church went into the pocket of the capitalists. Finally, the influence of the revolutionary writer Thomas Paine. In 1791, he published his great work, The Rights of Man. In this book, he criticized the then government and urged the people to be conscious of their rights. Soon, people started forming political entities and demanded democracy. In 1792, on the birthday of the king, the people revolted and planted tree of freedom in different places of the country. So the king became strict. He banished Paine, and Paine took shelter in France. Then the king imposed strict laws prohibiting all kinds of processions, congregations, and rebellions. The king abolished the law habeas corpus and detained the people without any reason, without conviction. Thus, he managed to control the revolt. Blake was greatly influenced by Paine and then wrote the poem showing the miserable condition of the then London society. Now, we are going to read the poem and understand what Blake tried to show in his poem. In the first two lines of the poem, the poet says, I wander through each chartered street near where the chartered Thames does flow. Here, wander means move about without any specific reason or purpose. And chartered street means the streets that are under the direct supervision of the city corporation or city corporation authority. And the river Thames. Thames is the river beside which the city of London stands. So the poet wants to mean that he wanders or moves through each important streets of London city which stands beside the important Thames river. In the second two lines of the poem, the poet says, and mark in every face I meet marks of weakness, marks of woe. In the first line, mark is a verb and it means to notice. And in the second line, marks means sign or symptoms. And woe means sorrow. Here, the poet means that when he moves around the city, he finds that no one is absolutely happy. He notices that symptoms of unhappiness and sorrow are present in the face of every people. In the second stanza, the poet says, in every cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear. Here, cry means wailing or lamentation, and the infants are none but the chimney sweepers. At that time, people were very much poor, so they did not want to have children. Whoever had children, they used to sell them as chimney sweepers, most of them. These little children had to clean or sweep the chimneys, taking high risk of their lives. Often, accidents took place and they had to suffer great injuries. Besides that, they suffered from various kinds of respiratory diseases. So, in these two lines, the poet shows the unhappiness of people and the helplessness of the orphan children. In the second two lines of the second stanza, the poet says, in every voice, in every ban, the mind forced manacles I hear. Ban means prohibition. Due to French Revolution and the influence of the revolutionary pain, people were being conscious of their rights. Some of them even revolted against the king. Then King George III imposed different rules and laws to control them, prohibiting their activities. So here, ban means the laws or rules imposed by the king upon the common people, and manacles means chain or handcuff. Manacles or handcuff are produced or forged in the smithy, but this manacle was formed or produced in the mind of the authority. The poet means that people were suffering inhuman treatment from the authority. The authority smothered their throat whenever they raised their voice for their rights. Even they were detained without conviction because the king abolished the habeas corpus law and detained them without convictions. So people did not show their courage anymore to raise their voice against the king. In the first two lines of the third stanza, the poet says how the chimney sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls. Appalls means fear, being afraid of. The church was corrupt at that time. So the poet says blackening church. Due to scientific advancements, people were losing faith in religion. The authority of the church decreased. To sustain their existence, the church went into the pockets of the capitalists. The church was responsible for taking care of the orphan children, but it employed the orphan children as chimney sweepers instead of taking care of them or giving them education. Even they were very much maltreated. Sometimes they were kept unfed if they denied to work as chimney sweepers. The sweepers cried for their misery. So the authority appalled or feared their cry because their cry may lead the church to further problems. In the last two lines of the third stanza, the poet says, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. Here, hapless means helpless, helpless. Here, hapless means helpless. The soldiers were helpless. They had to shed blood to save and protect the king. The wall of the palace is secured due to their blood, but they do not want to shed blood. They want to live. So they are utterly frustrated and curse their fate and sigh out of frustration. In the first three lines of the final stanza, the poet says, but most through midnight streets I hear how the youthful harlot's curse bursts the newborn infant's tear. Here, harlot means the prostitutes who involve in sexual relationship for money. Curse means scolding or ridiculing. Blust means disheartened or frustrate. In the midnight, the harlots get out on the street in search of their customers. But they have children. These children start crying when the mothers leave them. Then the mothers get bored and curse or scolds their children for crying because they are not expected children. They are born due to their physical relation with their customers. The children are born to add to their mother's misery. The children are barriers to their profession, so they scold them instead of adoring them. In the final line of the last stanza, the poet says, and blights with plague the marriage hears. Here, blights means affect with sexually transmitted diseases like syphilis, gonorrhea, and plague means sexual diseases. Hears is a car that carries dead body. So, here the poet criticizes the custom of loveless marriage of the time. Unhappy husbands sought pleasure in the arms of the prostitutes. Thus, they were affected with different kinds of sexual diseases that they carried to their families. Thus, the custom of marriage became a dead custom like hearse. Hearse carries dead body, and marital custom carries dead souls and diseases. I hope you all have understood the poem very well. Thanks for being with me so long. Keep in touch to get the next video.